This video is all about how we're going to check the facts. So you've got the workbook for going through this, but I'm going to talk about it in just a little bit more detail. We've already talked in previous weeks about why naming emotions is a really important thing to do. It really does help lots of people to reduce their distress and to regulate emotions. Just the process of naming what's going on for them. So that's the first step, just naming what is the emotion I want to change. And if you're not sure about that, take a look at Emotion Regulation Handout 6. It's got a set of different emotions, and just reading through those can help. If you're still not sure, it can help to go back to last week's work and look at the emotion cycle and see if you can pick apart what emotions are going on for you there. Once you've done that, you want to talk about the prompting event. And the way that we talk about the prompting event is we use the observe and describe mindfulness skills. That means that you're looking for what happened that you could sense through your senses, through your skin, through your eyes, through your ears, through your nose, through your mouth. What did you observe? What are the facts that you observed? And you can also describe sensations and emotions, not as facts, but that you're noticing this sensation is happening, that you're noticing this emotion is coming up, because it is a fact that you're experiencing the emotion that you're experiencing. It's very helpful to look through and challenge your judgments, challenge absolute black and white thinking, challenge interpretations. Just notice where interpretations are coming up, because that's really what we're coming to in the next section. Once you've observed and described the situation, we want to move into how you're understanding it, how you're interpreting it, and figuring out just a description of the interpretations that you're making. And emotions really colour our interpretations quite a lot. So if you're feeling jealous when observing a partner interacting with one of your metamors, you might have the thought or the interpretation, they think she's better than me. If you're feeling shame because you lost your friend's book, and that's a fact, the friend's book is lost, you might have the assumption or the interpretation, they're never going to lend me another one. So those interpretations are the sort of things that we want to make a note of. You've already talked about the facts, now talk about how you're interpreting those facts. What are you getting from them? What are you figuring out? What are you understanding from them? And once you've done that, it's really helpful to look at alternative interpretations. Is this the only way of thinking about this situation? When I walked down the corridor and people laughed, was that because they were laughing at me? Are there other possible interpretations? Maybe they were talking about something else entirely. Maybe they were retelling that joke I told earlier. Maybe they were talking about a funny story from the weekend. So seeking out alternative interpretations and seeing how they check out against the facts. And once you've done that, it can be helpful to go back to the observing and describing so that you can be really clear about what happened separate from your interpretations of those events. The next step is to look at threats. And sometimes we're not really conscious that a threat's happening, but in most situations that elicit really strong emotions, it's because there's some kind of threat underneath them, even if it's implicit, even if we're not consciously aware of it. And different emotions have different threats. So quite often, if you're feeling angry, the threat underneath that is being afraid of being attacked, or being afraid of something important that you're trying to move towards being blocked. If you're feeling disgust, then it could be that you're afraid of being contaminated by something. If you're feeling afraid, then often it's about danger to your health or to your life or to your well-being or to your relationships. If you're feeling sad, it might be because you're afraid, because you're feeling that you might lose something. There's a threat of permanent loss or permanently not being able to attain the goals that you want to. If you're feeling guilty, It might be because there's a threat that you've violated your values. Jealousy is often about the threat that someone's taking away something important of yours. Envy might be that you're not going to get something that you want that somebody else has, whether that's belongings or power or influence. It can be all sorts of things. So different emotions bring up lots and lots and lots of different threats. But what's important is what feels threatening to you in the moment that you're in right now. So when you're filling in this form, really try and do a moment of introspection. Figure out, what is it that's feeling threatened? What is it that's threatening to me right now? And then we look at how likely that threat is to actually be realized. Is that something that's a dead cert? We're completely sure it's going to happen? Is it maybe going to happen, maybe not? Is it kind of unlikely? It's worth thinking through what's the likelihood of this happening. And once we've done that, we move on to alternatives. So what are the alternative things that could happen instead? What are the other possibilities? And we really get into what's the most likely threatening event? What's the most likely thing that could happen? Because then it can help us to look at the catastrophe. So it is likely in many cases that something not so great might happen in a situation where we're feeling really intense emotions. And thinking about the catastrophe is really a way of identifying what our realistic worst case is and how we might cope with it if that did happen. So what are the resources I have in my life that would help me to deal with this situation if it really happened? Who are the friends I have? What are the financial resources that I have? What are the practical resources that I have? Who are the people that might help me? Who are the professionals that might help me? What are the things that I could do if this threatening situation, if this catastrophe really happened in my life? And the last thing we do is we look at whether the facts, once we've gone through all of this, once we've gone through describing them, we've gone through writing down what our interpretations are and then revising our facts, looking at the threat, looking at the catastrophe, and we've come to the end of the form. How much do the facts fit the emotion in its intensity and in its duration? And this is a really important step because it can be helpful to notice when your emotion fits all of the facts and it's completely spot on, and when it fits some of the facts and when it fits none of the facts, because you probably want to take different action depending on which of these is true. And also it will help you figure out whether this process is effective for you at recognizing whether or not emotions are fitting the facts for you. This piece of work is the foundation for the next couple of weeks. So figuring out whether or not something fits the facts is going to be really important to future weeks' work on problem solving and on opposite action. Thanks for joining me.